So we're recording. Okay. So we are now in the meeting. Do we have any issues with our notes or anything that we need to talk about? I personally, there were two people that were recommended as speakers, and they are with a law firm. And I was trying to remember what it was we wanted them to speak about. Kevin and Dick were the people that had suggested them. One was a lady named Maya, is that right? Maya Bellone and Jay Manning.
Maya Bellon.
Maya Bellon and
Maya
Jay
Bella.
Manning. They're both with Cascadia Law Firm, and they're both past directors of the Department of Ecology.
Yes. And what did we want to talk to them about? What we have in the notes is ask them what can a local government do that will pass constitutional muster, and how best to go about that.
Yeah, I think that that's basically the question. And both of them would have a good understanding of what abilities the county has. While it's not their expertise, they would be able to look in the constitutionality of it as well. But they both ran the time for Governor Gregoire and Inslee.
And I don't think we weren't suggesting that we needed both of them, but one or the other.
Okay. And do we have a preference for a first ask?
Since they're both in the same law firm, I have a suspicion, I think Kevin agreed, they'll decide who we get.
Okay.
Are we talking about hiring them for this period of time, or they're going to come give their a public service?
I understood it to be a public service.
Yeah, I'm talking about
This was them presenting to our committee.
Okay.
Okay.
I wish we could afford them with our additional 7,000 to help us draft this, but maybe we'll get some pro bono advice from them.
Okay.
Actually, I was talking about whether we were hiring them for their appearance here, or whether they were doing it as a public service. That's all I meant.
No, this is just a nice gesture on their part, hopefully.
Whenever you're dealing with lawyers, you got to make that clear. I'm a lawyer, so.
So do either of you want to talk to them, or do you want me to go and ask them? And if I'm going to do it, I need it. Oh, I guess I can look up. It's Cascadia is the law firm.
I can reach out to them, or Dick can, whichever, but I know them both well. I'm happy to call them.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. So we would be looking for them around the 24th of March. Okay. So Erica is going to be on next week in the very beginning. And then she's going to come on at about 10:15. And then I think Barbara Rosencotter will speak closer to 11:30, maybe something like that. But I'm going to talk with her a little bit after this meeting. Is there anything else we need to talk about related to the notes?
I just want to make sure I got this down right. So next week, we're going to hear from Erica and Barbara.
Right.
And we don't know when we're hearing from Maya.
Yep. I'm suggesting that we do that on the 24th of March. Does that sound okay? Yes? Okay.
I've got a question. Ahead. Did we determine, and this is a question for Kevin also as a chairman of the whole shebang, did we determine that we've got, looks like we've got 7 people on the committee, and when Kevin's here, it's 8. Did we determine, I've got a bunch of people on the process committee that have been talking about getting Erica to come talk to them. If she's going to be here, did we determine that people who are on the commission can't come as public and not participate, but just listen?
That's
They
what
know-
I heard at the last meeting, but go ahead, Kevin.
Other members of the full commission can sit in on a meeting. They will need to have their video off and their audio off. So be muted with no video. And then they would not comment or ask questions.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. I think I will invite people on our process committee to do that under those with that stipulation, and we'll just see what happens, because that would mean we wouldn't have to have Erica come twice. Although what I'm going to do is ask them to submit questions to me ahead of time.
Okay.
Ahead of time, because I'm on this committee also. Matter we're talking about. This is just a place where the committees are like this. You know.
Okay. And
Right.
I specifically asked her to talk about the interface between the comprehensive plan and climate change, and how the comprehensive plan affects decision-making and its impact on decisions. And I think that was kind of where you were talking about us going, Liz. So that's kind of the conversation we're going to have with her.
Anne Marie,
Yes.
does that include asking her the question of anything she sees that the CRC might do, to give that more teeth going
Oh,
forward?
for sure. I
Okay.
just wanted to kind of give her a broad
Got it, yeah.
overview of where we wanted to go, so she didn't think she was going to come in and describe how permits were done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And kind of
Yeah.
give us an orientation into the department.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Kendra's going to join us at 10:30. I don't know if many of you know her. I thought we might ask her after we introduce ourselves, ask her to tell us a little bit about herself, or does everyone already know her?
I don't know her.
I don't think I do.
Okay. So that'll be kind of the format. And then she's going to walk us through her department, what they do, how they're funded, how she's funded, what she does.
And remind me, if you would, why we're having her. I apologize.
Okay, Kendra works, she's under the umbrella of Public Works. She has the Environmental Resources Division.
Okay,
And my
yes.
understanding is they've been in other parts of the government in different capacities, and then they were all moved over together under Public Works. And Mike Thomas told us that she works as, I'm not sure how much, but she works as the Deputy Director of Public Works as well.
And did we give her some specific parameters, lead questions when we invited her here today?
I asked her more specifically to talk to us about her department, what they did, how they're funded, how she's funded. So we would kind of get an idea of what the Environmental Resources Division for the county does. I mean, I think it's kind of an important thing for us to know as we're moving forward,
So because the real question, as I recall, had to do with kind of the cross purposes of her job description, of where mainly the work that they're doing is going to be destructive to the environment, and yet she's charged with some concern of provision of the environment. Wrong word there, sorry.
Well, the people that work under her, as I understand it, are a salmon biologist, a marine wildlife biologist. She is a restoration ecologist. There is an environmental engineer. There's an environmental policy analyst. There's an environmental project manager, an environmental educator, and a GIS clerk.
Wow.
So that's a good group.
Yeah.
And Mike Thomas, when a presentation was made to the San Juan County Council, the new council members, by Kendra, Mike Thomas made a point of saying that they were mostly funded by grants, which would really mean that their work is very, very directed. And depending on how much general fund money they get, they may or not have much latitude in terms of where they can go and what they can do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
I
that will be,
thought, go ahead.
I was just saying that will be very interesting because to me that leaves me with the question is, with that much capacity, then what's missing that so much destruction is going on in terms of the enforcement realm? So I'm excited to hear from her. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay, I thought maybe we could go ahead and handle new business now too. It doesn't look like we have anyone from the public joining us right now. So is there anything new that we would like to talk about? Seeing none.
Yep, Kyle's got something.
Oh, Kyle, yes.
This is more formality, and this has come up on a couple of the other committees. I looked to try and catch up from last week. I looked in our Teams folder, and there's some notes from our first meeting. I know this is a challenge for some other people. The email list, the backlog is getting pretty long, so it's getting more and more challenging to go find older documents, attachments, and references. So, and I'm willing to do this for this and all the subcommittees, and I'm going to bring this up this afternoon as an item for the whole group. Are we having trouble getting old minutes and agendas posted in that folder? Is that something I can help with? Can we make sure we get the recordings, the Zoom recordings posted there also? And then it's a suggestion
for me.
You what?
I didn't hear your whole sentence there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we having trouble getting notes, minutes, and old recordings, and also any? I think more and more often we'll have, each of us might have some contributions or some outside information or referral sites or documents that we want the group to see, and I'd love to have us find a place, maybe the Teams part, where we can coalesce all that stuff. So,
Okay.
is my connection unstable?
No, but I think mine might be.
Okay.
Dick, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Kyle, I'm just wondering, to save you potential duplication, my understanding from some messages Olivia has sent is she is putting most of that on the county website. Now, it may be for convenience. It's a lot easier if they're in the folders you've created, but I just don't want to see you taking a lot of your time duplicating something if we don't actually need to do it.
Okay, Kevin?
Yeah, and I apologize for multitasking a bit during this beginning of the meeting anyway. So some of that is also being done. Kyle, to answer one of your questions, we have had trouble with county IT, not necessarily trouble with IT, but just in communicating with them what we need. And so I believe like the videos of the Zoom meetings and such are being posted as we speak. We'll see if that happens. And we should check back with Olivia because she had taken the lead on that with IT. But anywhere you're willing to help with Teams, I think would be fantastic.
Well, to Dick's point, if it's already somewhere on the county website, I don't really care. And I know that, we had the issue with Teams versus this Zoom platform initially, and we kind of made a leap and made it work. So, and I appreciate that pretty much everything has to be accessible to the public also. So I just want to make sure I'm having a hard time. If I need to go to the county website to find those materials, I'm happy to do that. I just think probably for the whole group that we build that avenue one time so that everybody knows exactly where to find things collectively. That was it.
Yes, Bob?
I got a question about this for Kevin. Right now, Olivia and Catherine have asked me to send them both the minutes and the agendas, and I do that, and then they take care of it. They post them. Now, the minutes, however, will lag behind because unless we're talking about proposed minutes, all that we have before the next meeting is proposed minutes, because at the next meeting we trot out the proposed minutes, and and people make whatever corrections need to be made, and then they get adopted, although they don't formally have to get adopted, but that's when they become the minutes. And so do they want us to put proposed minutes up there or wait until the meeting where
No,
they've been approved?
I'd say wait until they're adopted and then you submit them to be posted.
Okay, fine. That's all I had.
Okay, so yeah, Dick, go ahead.
Well, I just want to respond to Kyle and say, Kyle, I agree with you. I find the county website in many instances kind of a paragon of user unfriendliness. So if you want to do what you're doing so it's all more readily accessible to us, I'm happy, but I would just try to make sure you weren't taking up a lot of your time that you didn't need to. And I think Kevin's right, checking in with Olivia would be a good thing to do.
Kyle.
The time on that really is to go find it from each committee's work. If we decided to go that direction, it would be easy if each person, maybe each committee chair pushed. I mean, it's already going. I don't want to make more work for anybody else either. It's already going to Catherine and or Olivia. So maybe it's a conversation with them. I'll bring that up as a general email over. Well, it won't be overnight because our meeting's this afternoon. Maybe we can discuss it with the whole group this afternoon briefly.
Okay. Yeah,
Take it.
I work pretty well if I'm just told what to do on these things. So I just need to know if I'm supposed to give the minutes to somebody, I can do that. They told me when to get the agenda to them, I can do that. I don't think there should be a big thing about changing items on the agenda or adding things, but I guess I'll find out. We do have a guest, and I'm not sure who that is. Would you like to speak?
Anne Marie, that's me. I just know I'm going to be going outside with a little puppy, and I wanted to be able to
For
take
sure.
my phone.
Okay,
So
that's cool. Okay.
I do have a comment in this conversation about kind of housekeeping and better tracking. Is
Mhm.
that if we could put a request out that had to do with subject matter of any email, beginning with which committee, if it's a committee email, it began with the subcommittee name, and then, just to have the
context.
right, have this be as clear as we can in the title. So when we are going down, and I'm putting mine in folders, but sometimes it's hard to tell what an email content is by the title. And if we could just have a shared, consistent start with the subject or subcommittee title, and then whatever you want to say after that. Seems like that might be helpful. Kyle, what do you think about that?
That sounds great. I agree with that. It's really all time. I was just looking at Tom Starr and thinking, when in the days when you had to travel to do all these meetings, I mean, I'm crying about spending a fraction of the time, I think, trying to organize the electronic part of it. But and I'm grateful not having to travel a bunch for this. But yeah, I think anything that helps kind of shorten the search process would be great. I'd love that. If there was a tag word, like the committee's name or something in the front of the subject's great.
Tom, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have a question. Could you remind me on what our schedule is for actually submitting our pretty much finished proposals to the big committee? We talked about it one day and it was pretty vague, and if it's written, I apologize.
Kevin, you want to take that?
Yeah, so we haven't come up with an exact deadline yet. I'm imagining that by mid to third week of April, we'll want to be really bringing those together and then start working in diligently on packaging them as recommendations. So figure we've probably got another month for discussion. If we can come in sooner, that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest we try to move it a little faster than that, because I think everybody on this group will have tweaks that they want to make to anything that's going to be proposed to the committee. And if you're going to move an initiative, we have to get it finished really, I think, in the middle of June. So I could be wrong on the time, but I thought that's.
The other thing is I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So the other thing to keep in mind is that when we're done on this subcommittee having this conversation, we then need to present it to the full commission, and the full
Right.
commission is going to want to make suggestions, maybe
Right.
make tweaks, but definitely have a full discussion.
Right. Kyle, did you have something else?
Yeah, just around this topic, I have kind of two fears. One, that our town halls are going to either produce next to no people and no input, or the opposite, and that there are many, many people to hear from, and that whatever comes out Friday, Saturday kind of jams up the gears for us as we try and figure out where individual input pieces fit. So I don't want to take committee time right now, but I'm hoping, and because I missed both last week's this committee and the general, have we talked about a mechanism to weed through that sometime early next week, maybe between, say we'll do some committee work before we meet generally next Wednesday, that will come after the town hall. So I wonder if there's some thought there.
Robert?
The process committee has as one of its three jobs, there's the preamble and any Bill of Rights that's going to come out. And the third thing is to try to measure how the public feels about what is working in county government and ought to be left alone by the commission, and what is broken in county government, if anything, and ought to be tackled. And that is something, obviously, as time goes on, it'd be good to know that at the very beginning, but as time goes on, it becomes more and more urgent. We're going to be attending the town halls, and then if we don't get enough information out of those, it's our plan to come up with something else, whether we, and I don't know what those would be. We haven't even talked about it, but maybe if they would be, advertising in the newspapers, what we want to know, and here's the email address to send that information, whatever. But we need to measure that the temperature of the public, and the process committee is going to be doing that. That doesn't mean, I think there's going to be many areas where various committees are doing some of the same things, but we're going to be tackling that one. I just wanted you all to know.
Dick? Yeah.
I think we could guarantee a large turnout if we just say we want to talk about vacation rentals.
You and I were there. Let's hope that that's not a subject.
Yeah.
That was painful. And I personally thought, I'm going to be listening to if there are people from the public that attend, listening to those issues that kind of I'm on the committees for, and kind of figuring out if the committees I'm working with are going in the right direction. I kind of assumed that's what everybody was going to do. But I guess I have a question for Kevin in terms of, you talked at the last meeting about kind of, were there issues that we wanted to let the public know that we were working on? And I'm not sure if that is something that's still out there or not.
Yes, so what we're looking for is for each of the subcommittees to tell us, and I'll be raising this tonight in your updates to the full commission. Again, the highlights of what's starting to come to the surface within this committee that is starting to gain traction. And then in the opening presentation for the town halls, if there's some highlighted issues from different subcommittees, we will raise those as topics that are being discussed that have traction, so that the public can comment on this.
Good.
So I guess at some point today, we should talk about if we think we're a group that is getting some traction. What do you think?
Well, wasn't it Madam Chair, wasn't it at the last meeting or where we decided about
Right.
the establishment of a position that a position
Right,
ought to
yes.
be established. That's a big thing.
Okay.
You know, I think we need to refine that. We need to get a notion of what that person's authority would be, what that person's portfolio would be. What would that person be tasked by the charter to do? And I think that's what's left to work on. But that's a very specific thing. We can do that. You know, I think that we could hammer that out in a meeting or two. And then we've made a huge contribution with just that. And then whatever the other things that we want to do. So we're on our way.
I agree with Bob. I think that is really the big issue is, do we agree that a Department of Climate and the Environment should be put before the voters? And if so, what are the responsibilities going to be and what's the authority going to be? When I've raised the subject with people, that's what they say. Say, well, what would that department do, and what kind of authority would it have? You know, are you talking about creating a dictator that could overrule the council, or what do you know, is it just advisory? And you know, I get that kind of response. So I think those are the issues we have to be able to define if we're going to go forward with that.
So really also, in addition to the portfolio, the relationship with the San Juan County Council. Is that?
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean by authority.
Yeah. Sure.
Because if you define that department's authority, you're going to have to define the relationship with the council.
Sharon?
Yeah, so we're going to be speaking with Kendra in just a couple of minutes. Is that right?
Right.
So maybe we can start really delving into that after we speak with her.
Sure thing. Sounds like a good plan. Yes, Liz.
So at some point, I'm assuming there's going to be a crossover that's going to occur in the process committee. We have the Community Bill of Rights that's being brought up from a large number of people. So at some point, that's going to have to be addressed as to, does that become part of the preamble? Do we put that out? You know, there's something in the charter that would give that the impetus it needs to be impactful. So I don't know how that occurs between the two subcommittees, but I just want in terms of things that are going to have to be addressed by this group, given that we're dealing with climate and the Bill of Rights and the rights of nature, we're all addressing climate. It seems like at some point this committee is going to have to take on that work as well, or get updated by the other group. Just trying to keep that in the forefront of our thinking, that's probably going to show up at the town hall meeting, and it's going to be there as something for us to address as a whole group.
Okay. I may see if I can. Don't have a second computer. I'm wondering if Kendra's having a difficult time getting in. I sent her, she got the, yes, here she is. Hi, Kendra. I'm Anne Marie Shanks. I live on Orcas. And I thought maybe we'd just have everybody go around and tell you who you're meeting with today, okay? And then I thought you might want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we start talking about your responsibilities. So, Sharon, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Kendra. I'm Sharon Abreu. I'm a 20-year resident of Orcas Island. I'm an environment and climate change educator and musician, and I use music to try to soften the blow when I educate about climate change. And happy to be a member of the CRC and also involved in some other local groups. I guess that's really all I need to say for right now.
And do you know Dick Grout? Dick? You want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, Kendra. Dick Grout. I'm retired. I was the county planning director twice. Did you used to work in Skagit County? No? Okay. Different Kendra Smith.
Aha. And then we have Liz from Lopez.
Kendra, great to have you here today. Probably one of the things about me as I walked from LA to DC with a group of about 30 people in 2014, environmental issues gave me such an on the ground heartbreak about what's going on environmentally. So lived here for 7 years, brought that experience with me, and want to just see how the charter review or the home rule charter can have real teeth and support the well-being of our environment and our community.
Also hailing from Lopez is Bob O'Connell.
Hi, Kendra. I have lived here for 7 years, having moved here from Nashville, Tennessee, where I was a practicing attorney for 40 years. This was my number one choice for a committee to be on, because I think that climate and environment is the biggest issue. I think that if an edict came down from on high that said this commission could only deal with one issue, I think after some discussion back and forth, this is the issue we come out with, climate and environment, and what we can do, if anything, in our work with the charter to help to protect the climate and environment long run.
And you may know Kevin Ranker. He's also the chair of the commission.
Hi, great to see you. Thanks for all you do for us. You're amazing. I similar to Bob, actually, when I was looking at the subcommittees, this one really was important to me for the reasons that Bob stated, but also the fact that for a long time, I think that folks such as yourself within county government have had great ideas on how we can move things forward. And I will put this on myself as well, because I was one of them, but then they get to the legislative branch where they die miserably. And I've had so many friends who were incredible county employees. Most of them have quit since this point in time because of their frustration with trying to get bold things to happen. And so one of the reasons I ran for the Charter Commission, frankly, was to take a look at how we could create a platform within our county charter that will allow those bold ideas to transform into solutions.
And Kyle Davies is here. And I don't know if you guys know each other.
Somehow we don't. Good morning, Kendra. I appreciate you being here today. My background on the island is 25 years, actually, right out of college, and I've worked in EMS and fire. I'm on the Board of Health, but I think if I had followed my inner voice, I would be doing pretty much exactly what you do for the county, and I don't know how that happened. I guess that's less relevant. I'll say less about my interest in the committee and just say I think it's really important that this group and government in general hear from people on the ground. And I'd love to hear some of your actual vision if you feel comfortable sharing that with us at some point. I'll say that, and look forward to meeting you in person. Thanks.
And also Tom Starr is with us.
Hi, Kendra. Thank you for coming. And I'm a townie. I live in Friday Harbor after 50 years on San Juan Island. I was a county commissioner back in the day, and I've been on planning commission. So kind of a busybody in planning issues for 35 years or so. And I'm a retired land surveyor. So thanks for coming.
And Kendra, just so you know, at our last meeting, and anything we do in this meeting goes to the big commission. And then, there's the whole process with initiatives and things like that. But in our last meeting, a super majority of us said, yes, we need to create a new full-time position that is an elected position that addresses climate change, sustainability, and resiliency in the county. So that's kind of a little bit of a framework for you to be able to move forward with. And I'm going to suggest that everybody mute themselves so that we can listen to Kendra.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to share a little bit about environmental resources here at the county. I did prepare a slide presentation for you just to kind of jam pack you with all the work that we're doing. I can probably get through that in about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we could go back, or I could go slower and you could ask questions as we go. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that.
I'm going to suggest that we let you go,
okay,
because we could ask you questions and you'd never get finished.
I never get to the end. So
Right.
I can make this presentation available to you. So, and if you have follow-up questions, we can come back and readdress them. And, you know, maybe it'll certain things will come out as I blast on through this. So I'm going to try to.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. So I am the Environmental Resources Manager and the Deputy Public Works Director. So, and my background is actually a restoration ecology. So I have a master's degree, did lots of river and stream restoration throughout my career, primarily down in Oregon. So I worked throughout Oregon in both the public sector, working for a clean water utility, as well as for a nonprofit that worked with a diversity of parties throughout the state to implement large-scale restoration activities. So if any of you are from the Portland metro area or know Meyer Memorial Trust and the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, that's who I was working for a number of years. So yeah, it's been a long and productive career, I think. So yeah, I joined the county 4 years ago. And was tasked with the hodgepodge of whales, water, and waste, as I like to say. And we've spent some solid amount of time and energy stabilizing these programs and getting some good funding in place and building some infrastructure. So I'll run through some of that today. So let's see if I can make all this work. I'm working off my home computer, so hopefully you can hear me well enough. My county computer is very scratchy. So we'll see here if it's going to allow me to do this. I'm getting an error message. Oh, that's not good. Share. Is there a way for
you might have to give her permission.
Okay,
yeah.
so it says share screen. I just click on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then hit share. Okay. Oops. Okay. Okay. There we go.
Okay. So I think we're seeing your screen.
Oh,
Yeah.
how do I get out of my screen?
And I think you want to make me the presenter.
Okay. So let me stop share. Okay. So how do I
Or
make,
co-host.
pardon me?
Or co-host, yeah.
Co-host.
If you scroll over Kendra's photo, you could just, the simplest way would be just to make her host for this, and then she can give it back to you.
Okay. So how do I make her host?
If you scroll over her photo and the little dots up in the right corner, if you press on those.
Okay. It says ask to unmute.
No, is there one for make host?
Make host. Yeah, I got it. Change host. Change host. Okay. Okay.
Okay, I am the host now.
Okay. So
Oh.
can she just share her screen then?
She can do whatever she wants. She can hang up on all of us.
Okay.
I'm hoping this is going to work. So let's see. Oh, I'm getting into. Let's see. It's not wanting to go. Ooh, that's problematic. We've not had this issue before. Um,
Kendra, how large is the document?
it is 22 slides.
But I'm
I
saying,
can email it.
I was
Can I
gonna say, if you wanna-
email it to one of you?
you want to email it to me and I'll just go through your slides for you?
Yes, that would be most excellent here. Let me quickly do that.
If you could send it to
Sorry
my,
about this.
you could send it to my personal email, that will be easier for me to access on the computer.
Okay, what is that?
It's Kevin R, Kevinr at kevinranker.com.
Do you have to be the host then, Kevin?
Yeah. Well, she can just share, participants allowed to share screens as host too.
All right, sent. Let's see here. I'm not understanding why this wouldn't work. We've had numerous Zoom calls and haven't had a problem, but for some reason, I'll keep attempting here. Okay, it is now coming up. Oh, it is coming up now here. Let's see here.
Oh, there you go.
I think there was just a pause.
Okay,
Okay, is it coming up now?
it is. It's not centered on my screen.
There you
Can
go.
everybody else? Oh, there it is now. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, does that work for folks? All right, good. I'm glad we just had to be patient and let it run its course, I guess. Okay, so let me jump right in here. So as far as our division, we're in Public Works. You see here, both roads and environmental resources are all part of Public Works. Our mission for the environmental resources is to preserve the freshwater resources, protect the marine environment, and coordinate recycling and solid waste throughout the county. And we do this in partnership with a whole bunch of operators and nonprofits and citizens. So it's quite a diverse group of folks that we work with. As far as our team, we have 8 staff, including myself. You can see them here. A majority of them have advanced degrees in science and engineering. Our total FTE count, because some of them, work 4 days a week, that sort of thing, is 7.3 FTE. We also pay for 2 full-time equivalents for our admin team, which covers the office management, all of our contracting, and our financial accounting, which is very extensive with this program because of all the grants and contracts and capital projects that we run, which I'll articulate in a little bit more. But you can see these list of folks. Maybe you know some of them, and we can get into more detail about each of them. But this is a wonderful team of folks that are always ready, willing, and eager to help folks with projects. But as you'll see with this program, it's quite large, and we are kind of busting at the seams with the amount of work that we have. So in terms of the role of our program in the county, we have you've got the built environment, which is, planning, environmental health, roads, facilities. But we kind of come in, we're in that arena a little bit, particularly around solid waste and clean water. But we also have the marine program, and we've also taken on a role in cultural resources, in large part because most of our projects are in near shores and have cultural resources elements to it. So we've taken an interest in that, got some grant funding to do some training throughout the county on cultural resources. So that's kind of a new added element of our work. We also work very closely with Parks and Land Bank as they have projects, and we tend to lean towards the blue and the green infrastructure. So our key division strategies, the big part of our work is capital project delivery. So we implement stuff on the ground and in the field. We also have a variety of plans and other special projects related to community outreach and education. We really look to have science drive our work. You know, where are the issues and concerns? We know where those are in the field, and we attempt to address them. So if the stream's too warm, got to figure out how to get it shaded and improve the water quality there so that we won't have a problem in the future. So that's a key aspect that maybe makes us a little bit different than some of the other departments. And then advisory committees. We actually, our little group has 5 different advisory committees we manage. And this is one area where I'd love to get down to 1 because it's actually a fair amount of work to have that many advisory committees. But as you'll see, these programs are so unique, it may not be able to merge those. So within our division, these are the key major programs we have. So we run a clean water utility, which addresses storm, surface water, groundwater quality. We do both capital and non-capital projects. And I'll go into some of the details of what that's about. We have a budget of around $3 million combined budget, and that's utility service fee funded. So it shows up on your taxes, but it's actually a fee based on your equivalent service unit of impervious cover on properties. Then the marine program is primarily focused on protecting and restoring nearshore related type projects, as well as derelict vessels is in that program. And there's about a 500 to, I would say, 750, as high as 750 annual budget that is predominantly grant funded. We also have the solid waste utility, and they cover recycling, hazardous waste, litter control, solid waste, and the broad spectrum of things associated with getting waste off the island or recycling it on the island. And that program has about a $1.6 million combined budget, and that is excise tax funded, as well as we receive money for capital improvements through REIT or the Public Facilities Assistance Grants or LTAC. And then, as I mentioned, cultural resources, it's not really a full-on program, but we have started doing some awareness and trainings specifically around the tribes here and their role in the islands. They are continuing to engage with us, which has been fantastic. And we would really love to see folks take a little bit more of a proactive interest in addressing tribal issues or concerns, especially when they're doing site development activities. Okay, so I'm going to jump into each of these 3 programs and just give you a little bit high level, more detail. So under the clean water utility, this year alone, we've got riparian corridor restoration, and we have culvert improvements, water quality monitoring, and stream mapping. So these are just a handful of the projects that we've got going on. We do oftentimes on the surface water, which all these projects are, they take multiple years to do. Trees don't just, you don't just stick them in the ground and walk away. There's a lot to it. And so these projects take some time to deliver. On the stormwater side, we also have some extensive projects going on. And these are projects that are targeting the high pollutant load areas with urban runoff. So we have a nice cooperative relationship with the ferries, for example, to do street sweeping and catch basin cleaning, as well as all the villages. And then we get into some of the hamlets as well, that we do street sweeping, catch basin, and line cleaning to try to get all of that nasty grit out of the system as much as possible. We do that kind of later in the season. We do the line cleaning and the catch basin cleaning, but we do the street sweeping. You'll notice Friday Harbor comes over and sweeps the various locations where we have higher load areas to really remove that pollutant load before it even gets into the system. And then we have a series of capital projects where, you know, when that water is coming and running off the roads and draining into roadside ditches in these kind of higher urban concentrated areas, we have water quality facilities designed to improve that water before it hits the receiving water, before it hits, you know, Fisherman Bay, or before it hits East Sound. So, and then we also do the review and stormwater development review and inspections, and then also look at code updates and the like. So this is a fairly extensive program for one person to handle. And then the kind of third leg or of our clean water utility, we work with the health department on groundwater related issues, saltwater intrusion monitoring. So we participate with them on that. And then we also dabble a little bit kind of in the brackish or nearshore marine with estuary related type projects, things like tide gates and those sorts of things, where we're actively observing the impacts of climate change, and these tide gates actually not, over time, they are not going to be able to perform relative to rising sea levels. And we already see this out over on McKay Harbor Road. And so that's an area of interest. And then for habitats impacted by contaminated runoff, areas of eelgrass, Westcott Bay is a good example of that, which we help fund through the marine program. But if we can do things upstream in the system before that freshwater plume comes into the estuaries, we want to make sure that that's as clean as possible. So the marine program is very interesting, and has moved from kind of just doing what the state grant tells us to do, to really focusing on what the county needs are around protecting the marine environment. And so we've been doing a good job of making adjustments to the types of projects that we deliver to really hopefully boost value of receiving those grants here in the county. So in this program, we're focused on marine and nearshore infrastructure. And I'll go into a little more detail about that in a minute. Boater education and behavior and responsibility, nearshore restoration, species recovery, and the ongoing challenge with this particular program, which is sometimes hard for me to understand given that we're surrounded by marine waters, but funding stabilization is always kind of on the forefront, because this is not a utility, so it doesn't have a stable source of funding. So on marine infrastructure, we're looking at things like mooring buoys, the dock capacity. As you might have observed this summer, we just got bombarded by boats coming into the system, to recreate. When they come, they also anchor out in eelgrass. They use our water. They pump out, either hopefully they're pumping out at the pump out stations, and we're working with ecology to help ensure that people are using the pump out stations. But there's just a lot of activity happening in the marine environment, and it's increasing quite a bit. And then through the Northwest Straits Initiative, we have our Marine Resources Committee working on things like eelgrass and kelp, and our plastic-free sailor sea program, and updating our stewardship plan. Another key aspect of our work, and this is actually a piece that is county funded, is, and we also receive grants from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, is to work on boater behavior. A lot of people that are coming up here don't necessarily know that there are whales in the area, or maybe aren't always paying attention. We initiated this whale warning flag program to try to provide a social prompt to encourage boaters to warn other boaters when there are whales in the area, to get them to slow down, turn off their fish finders and depth sounders, so that the whales have some opportunity, hopefully, to find their food and forage, because of course the noise, the acoustics issues are pretty big for the southern resident killer whales. We also have a West Side management study going on right now that's looking at the acoustics and physical presence of boats and its impact on the whales. As you can see from this image down below, the red zone is where the whales are present most often when they are here and coming through the Salish Sea. So that is a concentrated a level of effort going on there for the whales. And, is there anything that can be done working with the state and feds to try to give these whales some peace while they are needing to actively forage? And then, of course, our lead marine biologist, Frances Robertson, is also on the committee that's working on the whale watch licensing and following and collaborating with the state to advance this program. So we also have salmon recovery. So we manage, we're the lead entity in managing the salmon recovery grants that come from the state and the feds. And so we actively administer that grant program for basically anybody that wants to apply to improve, their nearshore habitat and the like. For salmon, they come through this grant program, but the county also has project managers that are implementing nearshore restoration. A couple of on our target, we have designed already and will be constructing in the next few years are the McKay Harbor Beach restoration and also the Agate Beach restoration. And then we're in the planning and design phase of projects like Jackson Beach to try to remove those pilings and get that nearshore armoring off the beach. And then we're also looking at a situation with a very small culvert along Crescent Beach Road, along the road down near Crescent Beach, and the need to look at if we can open that up and restore some habitat connectivity. I told you the marine program keeps going. Under the regional efforts, we also have, in addition to the Be Whale Wise and the work that Frances is doing with the southern resident killer whale, we also have the Puget Sound recovery and engagement, and that's done through the local integrating organization, and that's led by Marta Green. And I forgot to mention it, Sam Whitridge is managing the salmon recovery program as well. I have a slide at the end that kind of lays out who's where. But Marta handles the local integrating organization that looks at the broader issues of the Puget Sound partnerships efforts to advance this work. And so they have, she engages with that program, and then also is doing a lot around marine vessel impact and oil spill prevention. And so we just recently finished up a study to document the benefit of having an emergency rescue tug to reduce our risk of catastrophic oil spill. And that information will go to the legislature, and hopefully we can get Canada to foot the bill for this next one, since we already pay for the one at Neah Bay. not we personally, but the US. The last item in the marine program is the derelict vessel response program. We have seen a significant rise in derelict vessels here in the county. You can see from that 2019 low to 2020. It requires significant coordination with DNR, ecology, the port, contractors, and the property owners to try to deal with these boats. I mean, they're people drag an anchor, there's boats crossing in front of the ferry, there's people tied up to, party barges that break free, and then their boat becomes a navigational hazard. Who do they call? Us. So we deal with all of this. We work also with the sheriff's department, but ultimately, to take custody of these boats as they're sinking, they've run aground and the like, it's quite an effort. The state pays for most of this. They pay for 90%, but we're finding that it takes a lot of time and they are also not necessarily have all the resources. And so we oftentimes have to straddle between seasons because the state might have run out of money. So we have to wait to get the reimbursement. So we're really looking at doing a prevention strategy going forward to try to curb this number. So, okay, last section. Solid waste. So solid waste, we have community cleanups and has waste cleanups. We do outreach and education. We also have capital upgrades and landfill monitoring. Those are the major programs. As you may know, in 2012, the county went to a privatization of the solid waste, but the county still retains through its excise tax, and as a general district, we are ultimately responsible. So if any of these service providers back down, it ends up being the county's responsibility. So we have transfer stations on San Juan that's run by Laudenbach. Orcas is Orcas Recycling Services, or ORS. And then Lopez, the drop box facility there, is run by the Lopez Solid Waste District. And then our franchise hauler is San Juan Sanitation. So we have one staffer that works with all of these operators to advance this work. He also runs the hazardous waste events that we get grants funded by the state to collect and pick up all this material. We have special contractor that comes in, they put on the suits and they collect all the hazardous waste, and then they have to barge that off separately. And as you can see, our numbers bumped up this past year, which is great to get that material off site. We're hoping it's everybody cleaning out old, houses that were turning over, and you had lots of spare time because you were in COVID. So, but we really need to figure out a way to get people to not be buying this stuff and delivering it over time. Litter cleanup, we have annual spring and fall events, Adopt a Beach program, and through the Plastic Free Sailor Sea. So we work with Youth Conservation Corps folks to deliver this and just try to keep the environment as clean as possible. So these are great little programs that have really have bang for their buck, so to speak. And we also receive money from the state for some of this. And then some emerging issues, kind of full cycle analysis. We are starting to look at behavior change and waste and recycling practices. The recycling contamination is a big issue. We're also looking at the impact of the climate and the carbon footprinting, and really helping people to understand that if you don't recycle right, your stuff goes to a MRF, a municipal separation facility, and if it's dirty, then it goes to the landfill. So it takes a detour before going to the landfill. You'd be better off to throw the contaminated material right into the garbage bin. That way it goes directly. But people have wishful recycling in their minds. And of course, we have a lot of people coming from a lot of different places where the recycling practices may be different. So there's a real need for us to continue to do outreach and education around some of this work. And then lastly, special projects. These are just some interesting things that we've taken on. We've had the San Juan Stewardship Guide. You might have seen that in the local library. We'll be redistributing these as COVID starts to wane. We've done some things with Island Marble Butterfly and Orcas Landing. The art and the interpretive signs and the work that's being done out there is being led by our team. And then I personally coordinate with the Terrestrial Managers Group. So all the parks and land bank folks and the land trust we're kind of the water people of that group, but we coordinate our efforts going forward. So looking ahead, some key things that might be of interest to you all, but as far as when I'm thinking about, kind of on the ground and here in the county and environmental resources, the sustainable tourism management plan and trying to get that done is something that has been kind of on our mind because we know that it's impacting our available resources for water, for dealing with garbage and the like. There's also some need to look at integration of the county capital investments that we make towards the future vision, whether that's addressing the tourism and then other vision within the county. How are we making sure that our capital investments align with that vision is something that I serve on the capital committee with a variety of other managers that are implementing projects. And we kind of have a laundry list, but there's never been really a filter that we run through to say, okay, this is a higher priority than that, or what have you. We all just kind of bring our stuff to the table and then, document that we have the money and then we go do it. So that's an area that might be of interest. I feel pretty strongly that there needs to be a continued increase in outreach and education regarding stewardship. There's only one outreach and ed person that's over in the land bank. We do that as staff in our group individually, but it's a hard thing to get to when there's so many other pieces. But we do know that is a key aspect of keeping it on the forefront of people's minds to protect the environment and cultural resources and the like. And then the last thing I would say that, environmental resources, we're, in public works, which is great. And we're part of that department. And that's a good place for us to be housed. But given the level of the depth and breadth, as I've shared with you here, you could look at the possibility of making that division a department to help with kind of a parity situation where, parks has its own department, land bank is its own department, planning is its own department, and environmental resources is kind of sitting a little bit below that as just a division of public works. And so if you're looking at, climate and environment as something you want to see as a driver, you might look at making an adjustment there to having it be a department. But I do think it, still collaborating closely with public works is key because we learn from each other every day. So that's been a great thing. All right, that's it. So I'll just open it up. That was quite a bomb of information.
That was a really excellent presentation. Thank you so much. I'm gonna let us go to some questions if that works. Sharon, did you have something?
Yeah, first thing I want to say was I'm exhausted just hearing you describe what you do.
Sorry.
But I'm impressed and I appreciate it because I really didn't really know the depth and the breadth of it. So thank you.
Yeah.
And it would be great if you could share your presentation with us. I think that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, a handful actually. Kendra, first of all, thank you for a very thorough presentation. And again, thank you for everything you're already doing for our community and for the wildlife and resources. I should reverse that actually, say the wildlife and resources and the communities that depend upon them. So a couple things. I didn't take notes quickly enough. You mentioned something the MRC was working on at the end of that slide. What was that?
Was it the Orcas Landing Marine Interpretive Center?
No. It was,
Let me click back here.
no.
Towards the end of the presentation, or?
When you were talking about the MRC, the Marine Resource Committee.
Yep, they are working on a diversity of things from eelgrass restoration to they're updating the marine stewardship plan.
That was it.
They have the southern resident killer whale work.
Yeah. But the MRC Voluntary Advisory Committee, so they're not actually doing work. So they're making recommendations or they're contracting. Previously, I know a lot of the Northwest Straits money and the lead entity money went through the MRC and the MRC coordinator. So one question is, do we still have a staff MRC coordinator?
We do, and it's a half-time position that I think they funded around $75,000 or $80,000 a year. So Frances serves in that role, but then she also goes out and gets a bunch of grants and other things to basically have a full FTE that is doing work for the marine environment.
And Madam Chair, if I may just ask a
Go
few
ahead.
more. Yeah. So, but the MRC, are they still, they're not doing the work. They're contracting with other entities to do the work. Like in the past, they would give grants to Friends of the San Juans or something on the eelgrass, and they would give grants to, Claylock or somebody, whatever that Russell.
Yeah, we haven't really been operating that way. Up now, most of the stuff is done in-house and with those volunteers. So now, Frances project manages the eelgrass, and members of the MRC participate in those efforts.
What on eelgrass are you doing?
So for example, she got some funding from Puget Charitable Trust to do some eelgrass work around collaboration and coordination. And we're working with Friday Harbor Labs and other parties to make sure that we all know what each other is doing and building out a robust program to advance restoration and monitoring strategies in eelgrass.
Okay, awesome. On Orca, very clear with that. One question though, how much coordination is there with the Sheriff's Department and Marine Enforcement at the county level? Because the flags, obviously I was very involved with that process and starting that blue ribbon panel that we have a position on now. Mm-hmm. And just to be frank, the flags don't really, they sound great, they look pretty, but it's the enforcement is solely the thing that's going to make a difference. So are you coordinated with the Sheriff's Department? And when the sheriff comes in, I plan on asking him how much time he's been spending on marine enforcement, but I don't think it's much.
Yeah, no, because they are not the enforcing authority. It's actually Fish and Wildlife. So we have to turn to Fish and Wildlife when we see things. And then of course the coordination with Soundwatch between those two parties, they get after the people that are egregious. And I happen to live at Eagle Cove, so I get to bear witness to the egregious behavior on a regular basis. And so we snap a few photos and let people know. And we have seen people flying the flag, and particularly the whale watch boaters, they will wave that flag if they see a boat racing down the the west side, and the whales are there and they're spread out because oftentimes people just don't even realize. And so it's meant to be like a diver down flag, just to let people know, hey, you know, there's whales here. You're coming on scene. You might not even know that they were there. So I've watched people do it. You know, it's a social prompt. It's there's, you know, you probably need 10 times more flags, and you have to really engage people to really be aware of it. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation actually has funded us to encourage and promote this program down sound, to try to get boaters that are coming up here to be aware of the flag and to utilize it. So we're trying, but it's a hard thing. Boater behavior is a tough one.
I will say, just so you know, we went round and round with the police associations as well as sheriffs, and our sheriff as well. Our sheriff has the ability to enforce state and federal law. And
Yeah.
so our sheriff, being out on the water, can enforce the state and federal law. It's they choose not to necessarily prioritize that action. The other thing I would say is, you know, when do you do 55 miles an hour on I-5? When you're next to a state trooper. So when do you behave appropriately around whales? When there's an enforcement vessel there, whether or not they're enforcing it or not.
Sure.
The other bigger question.
Kevin, could we let some other questions come in?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just have one other.
Pardon me?
I just have one more, but I'll wait and let others go.
Does anyone else have any questions? Liz, you look like you have one, and Kyle has one.
Kendra, I have two questions. And again, to echo Kevin's appreciation for the work you do, I'm really excited to hear about it and learn more about it. My first question is what was your department's role, you know, in the comp plan process? And then my second question is, it seemed like the least sourced area was community education. And you seem to have a degree of interest in changing that. I'd be eager to hear, because, you know, the community is the one that's creating the problems. So that seems like it should be a highly sourced area. And I'm eager to hear what your thoughts are about it.
Sure. So comp plan engagement has been relatively low for our group, other than providing the planning department the information they needed to know about the solid waste facilities, you know, the clean water utility, and some, you know, base information. And I don't know how that should be different, but we could certainly look at that kind of going forward. And then I would say on the environmental and kind of stewardship outreach and education, yeah, that's an area that has really, it's been a hard thing to get traction on. You can see that we've been doing it. We put out the stewardship guide. We try to put the brochures. We have, if you go to the county website, go to, you know, government services, environmental resources, you can take a look at our web page for these different sub-programs. We really tried to get information up and available there, probably more than what you might see in some of the other departments, but we don't have anyone actively helping us make that happen on a regular basis. I've always felt like there should be some kind of, you know, eco news you can use that, you know, is in the newspaper and as a news flash on the county web page, where, you know, every week there's something new to kind of trigger in people's minds that, oh, we really do need to take care of this place. And hey, there might be other facts that you didn't know about the environment that we could share with people. So yeah, and that I don't know about its level in the comp plan on the community engagement there.
Kyle, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kendra, if I made and sent you a Czarina of Climate badge, would you wear it?
Sure.
I think this presentation and you narrating could play on the ferry on a loop and be really practical. I mean, I think part of the outreach part, I hear you on that level. Every citizen and visitor should, probably true on many county levels, but for sure this one should be as educated as we are now after half an hour. The question I have for you, you mentioned that the marine environment is not treated as a utility per se here. Are you aware of any place, Washington or Oregon or otherwise, where it is?
No.
There's a mechanism for that to happen.
Yeah, there currently is not a state mechanism. So, the clean water utility that's funded under, or developed as part of Clean Water Act compliance, but there isn't anything for the marine. Some counties do get into estuary and some nearshore work, but not, full on marine. So they need to make the link back to the Clean Water Act and the regulations around stormwater utilities. So the marine is really left without, other than these wonderful grants that we do receive, but there isn't a steady, stable source of funding. And we've been challenged to figure that out locally, but we've been fortunate. We've got great grant writers in our staff that have been able to get some funding to help us do what needs to get done.
So you don't even see a portion of, for a nearshore development application, your office doesn't see any of those proceeds directly?
No, and things like nearshore development, that's done by the planning department. So we actually don't, even though we have the technical biologists that could answer questions about the nearshore, that is handled over in planning. Whereas under the clean water utility, we do handle the stormwater review, and then that gets back. We issue our recommendations, and that gets kicked back into the planning process to be approved. But that doesn't happen in the marine. On the marine work, it all gets handled at DCD.
Let's have Bob, you want to go ahead? You have your hand up? And then before we go to a second round on people, I'm going to make sure everybody gets to at least go first. So you need to unmute yourself, Robert.
Kendra, I want to say first what everyone else is saying, which is thank you very much for this presentation and for everything that you're doing. I think that it has already been voiced, but I'll revoice this also. It would be very valuable for me and probably for the other members of the committee if we could have a copy of these things that you presented and have that maybe soon so that we can use that in our consideration regarding the climate environment going forward. Let me ask you this question and possibly a follow-up if that could be allowed. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it would be helpful, Kendra, in our efforts to protect the environment here to establish an elected position of advocate for the environment or environmental commissioner, something of that nature, which would head up a department of climate and environment?
That is a good question. That is a political hot seat question.
Yeah. There you go.
I think that knowing how much time I spend on budgets and how tight our county budgets are, we need to just be thoughtful about, where we would get the resources to, fund such a position. Certainly, I mean, I'm all for, elevating the value of protecting the environment, obviously, in the county.
Kendra, assume the resources are there for this, at least for this one position, this elected position.
Yeah, if there was some miracle funding source, certainly. I mean, I think as an intermediate step might be having the division become a department would basically put it on the same level as the planning department, the roads and transportation, the health department, the land bank, and parks. So that, I mean, that's kind of an interim step that wouldn't cost you anymore. I'm not going to ask for any more money.
Would you see any value in having the person who headed up that whole department and being an elected individual?
An elected individual, at least from what I have seen with the previous county council and this one, is they have not, the current county council has not been a barrier to advancing the climate work, environmental work. They've been very good and respectful and asking good questions and trying to, balance all of the various needs. I think it's allowed us to come up with good policy. So I haven't seen the lack of an elected person that's focused on the environment as an issue or a barrier to success in what we've done so far. So.
All right. So
Okay,
thank
so
you.
let's
Thank
hear
you,
from
Kendra.
Dick Grout, and then I have a few questions. Go ahead.
Kendra, you may have mentioned it, but if you did, I missed it. What's your relationship with the town of Friday Harbor in this work? And I'm thinking particularly of the outfall into the bay at the bottom of Spring Street and the kinds of things I see going into the storm drains and even often construction projects where there's no filter cloth in the storm drains. This, kind of standard procedures are not being implemented. So what happens in the town? What's the county's relationship there?
So the town has its own stormwater fee. So we actually have to draw a boundary around the town, and we don't have any authority within the town itself. So they collect their fee and they do their stormwater work there. We certainly coordinate with them. Like, I asked them to get a vacuum assisted sweeper when they needed to replace their sweeper, and they went out and they did, which was great because it's a better sweeper. And then we borrow their equipment. We could certainly look at doing a little bit more in collaboration with them. If complaints come in, we can have a conversation with them to try to nudge them into encouraging better practices. I personally have stopped contractors and asked them to make some changes out in the field just as a citizen. But yeah, it's we don't really have authority within the town, but can certainly have some follow-up conversations. And the town can and occasionally does participate in the Clean Water Utility Advisory Committee. So, and they do participate in the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. So that there's an opportunity there for better engagement as well.
Yeah, I just wondered if you had any kind of arrangement or understanding with them. It sounds like not much.
Not much, just because of the nature of the beast. They collect, their stormwater fee is actually much bigger than ours in the rest of the county.
So I was really excited when I heard you talk about sustainable tourism and clean buildings. So my first question has to do with, do you receive or have you applied for any of the lodging tax?
Yeah, we actually, the stewardship guide that we produced was paid for with lodging tax funds.
So that's all.
We did that, and we did apply for the interpretive area over at Orcas Landing for the marine interpretive area, but we didn't get LTAC money, but we did get the public facilities assistance funding.
And how is your funding structured, the structure for your position?
My position is paid for primarily by the two utilities. So the clean water utility and solid waste. I split the cost of the position. I think it's like 70-30. 70 over on clean water because that's where I do more of my work, and 30 in solid waste. And then in the Marine program, I do a lot of work in that program, but I don't book to any of the grants or anything. We just kind of.
And then my other questions have to do with who is responsible for the fleet management going green, and who is responsible for green buildings? Who spearheads those operations?
Yeah, so fleet management is Van Avery. And so he handles all the fleet upgrade, and then the building upgrades is handled by Greg Sawyer. He's the facilities manager, so he deals with all the buildings. He was doing the solar installation at the fairgrounds and that sort of thing. So those two are the ones that do some of that more built infrastructure. The climate, what was it, an MOU? I can't even remember now. The resolution that
right.
the council, the climate resolution,
Right.
that work, building off the 2008 work, Mr. Hughes had asked for some kind of update around that. And I worked with a couple of folks internally, and we prepared that document to council. So even though I wasn't in the universe of doing very specific climate work, because that's not kind of in our group's charter at this point, but I was willing to kind of highlight some of the things that we could be doing to move the needle.
And I know Kevin had another question. It looks like Sharon, do you have another question after Kevin? So why don't we go ahead, Kevin, if you want to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kendra, and you started to touch on this earlier, but previously the salmon work and such was in the planning department, which also has a lot of link. Planning, and particularly planning, not as much permitting, but planning definitely has a lot of overlap with environmental issues, management. They're seeking and receiving funding to do some of this. How are you coordinated with them? And then the second part to that question is, if there were a consolidation under an umbrella of kind of a climate and environment department, would you see some of those positions coming under that same umbrella?
Oh, those are good questions. As far as engagement with planning, ours is actually fairly transactional. So, we have to get permits from them to implement capital projects. That's been primarily the universe that we've operated with them. We coordinate. They have to manage the voluntary stewardship program, which goes through the conservation district, but we're actively engaged with the conservation district and other parties to implement that program and try to get more restoration done out on the ground. There are some areas that are coming forward here in the not too distant future where we will need to have further engagement. Of course, updating the marine stewardship area plan. We're also finishing the update to the salmon recovery chapter. And those will be things that we will want to make sure that the planning department is aware of, and they're integrating into their thinking as they do critical areas review and the like. We do engage with them closely on the stormwater side of the equation. And they will often come to us if it looks like there's going to be an impact to some wetlands or streams and the like. They know that we have the technical capability in-house to kind of give them a second opinion before they move forward. So we will kind of do that work on the fly. Although Krista does do all of, she does actively, pretty much everyone who comes through has some kind of stormwater thing that they've got going on a site. So she does all of those reviews, and we kick that back into the system for them to approve. So yeah, I don't know. The one area that we have had internal conversations in our group around was around the marine review and to some degree the cultural resources piece, and whether or not we could offer additional support or coordination with them to help them, because they basically are looking at maps where, as we're out in the field and we're trained in these kind of different areas. So, you know, if there's anything we can do to help them, you know, we're happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Sharon and then Liz.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just curious if you folks have been interfacing. I mean, for my personally, I would love to interface on stewardship and outreach and environmental education. I run a small nonprofit on Orcas Island since 2002, and our mission is environmental education. And I know Puget is doing a lot of environmental education. It would be really wonderful if we could be, you know, helpful in outreach and education and stewardship. Can you speak to that? Have you worked with any of us?
Not specifically, other than, you know, Quiot has occasionally applied for salmon recovery funding. But most of our kind of like I said, our outreach has been maybe not to the level that we'd like to see it at, but it's been more focused around projects or programs. And so we're just trying to get out, you know, the bare minimum that we have time to produce, really. And the stewardship guide was really the one thing that was out on the limb. And, you know, that actually stemmed from myself being a little tired of hearing everybody complaining about all of the issues that they saw with visitors coming. So they had the whole laundry list of things, and I started to write them down, and I just started taking notes, and you know, within a year I had the laundry list, and I had an idea about what we could do to put that out. So the stewardship guide, you know, goes into all of the hotels, Airbnbs, and the like. And actually, we do also, we stopped it during the COVID time, but we do have a video version of that that is shown on the ferries. So as people are coming over, there's flashes of that stewardship guide. So that's pretty much all we've done, but you know, certainly spreading and expanding the outreach would be a great thing. If we just had a little more capacity, we could probably tackle that, but it's we're just keeping our head above water, as you can imagine what I just showed you, with the 7 or plus people we've got. So
Okay, Liz.
I wonder if it would be possible, and maybe to a certain degree it already exists, for your department to provide this commission with a top 10, top 5 areas of disconnect. You know, what is it that keeps you awake at night? What to really help our commission hone in how we could support your department's success? Is that a reasonable request from your department?
Yeah, I think we could could provide that for sure. I would say maybe one of the I'll share. You know, I next June I'll be leaving the county, so I know. So I'm taking a midlife break. I have worked very hard for the environment for the last 30 years, and I'm pretty exhausted. And so I am working really hard, mentoring our staff and team, and thinking about this transition and what we need to do to maintain the momentum. So the timing is actually probably pretty good to be having this conversation. You know, I feel like I've done quite a bit to button up and get the 2 utilities in really good shape. Financially, the Marine program, I'm still struggling a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I can certainly generate that list and you know, give you some guidance of what you might need going forward, as well as hopefully hiring my replacement that is better than I am and helping it run forward. So
Kendra, given that you're leaving in June, which
not
kudos
this
to
year,
you.
next year.
Yeah,
But you got me for
following-
another year and 4 months. So,
Perfect. And kudos for you for taking good care of yourself in a 30-year stretch. Thank you for doing that. And it kind of makes you the perfect person to do that because, you can really look at what is the legacy that you've left and what's the gaps that you weren't able to address, what could be changed
yeah.
on a home rule charter level that would reinforce those things that you and your staff really wanted to see done. And, where do you feel like you're losing ground and just it's not happening that we might be able to reinforce? So I'm glad I asked the question and yay,
so am
thank
I.
you.
So am I, Liz. Excellent question. Tom Starr, we haven't heard from you yet. You need to unmute. Let's see, you're still muted.
There we go.
Okay.
Kendra, you've mentioned several projects that are result of climate change and sea level rise, and I'm familiar with McKay Harbor Road, having surveyed along there even a few years ago. You mentioned several others, but in the broader issue of climate change, do you think we're dropping the ball in lots of other areas that have yet to be fleshed out and solved locally? I know that's a tough question, but maybe since you're a short timer, you can really shoot straight with us.
Not get fired tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting with climate change because it's just we're going to be in it for the long haul, and we are looking at what, for example, we do have maps that show the roads that are going to go underwater or be eroded in the next 20 years sufficiently that we're going to have to be moving some roads or doing some managed retreat. And we have been having those conversations around that. Another area, and I brought up the tourism master planning work, is travel is a big part of the impact on the climate. And so one of the questions is like with destination travel, if some of that is done closer to home, does that lower the carbon footprint of the visitors that you do have coming here? So thinking about travel and tourism here, given that it is such a large driver in our island communities with limited resources, how do you make sure that that impact is minimized? And then the other things we have kicked around in our shop around, getting Susie's moped to convert to electric vehicles. So the mopeds switched over, which I know she's doing this, I think some electric bikes and other things. But getting our bike lanes up to pace so that that is a viable option for people coming out of the ferry. And then, pushing the solar where we can do that to be a little more self-sustaining. So there's quite a few things that we're looking at, but there's no silver bullet, single silver bullet that I can think of at the moment.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you for all your work. It's terrific.
So I'm just looking to see if I've missed anyone. Sharon, I wasn't sure. Did you have another question? No. Okay. Everybody's good.
Yeah.
Kendra, is there anything that you would like to, having heard our questions, you would like to kind of come back to us with, or not necessarily in the future, but even now? Closing thoughts?
Well, I think just closing thoughts is, I so appreciate that you all have an interest in the climate and the marine environment. And I think you really do represent a majority of citizens here in the islands. Like, I encounter people all over the place with our various projects and things. And when they find out that the county actually has an environmental resources team, they are always shocked and super excited that it even exists, and thankful. They thank us that we're there and doing the work. So that's comforting, and I'm glad that you are taking a serious look at it. I know that the challenge with budgets and the like, and that has to be factored in the full equation. But it's an important part of sustainable life going forward. So I really appreciate your interest and willingness to ask the hard questions of how we get our work done and how we might be able to do it better. And I will go back and think a little bit more about the 10 gaps that need to be filled, and see what I can come up with. It may take me a little bit of time to think through, but I will bring that back. And who should I bring that to?
Probably just send it to me and I'll get it out to everybody. The same with your program. If you just email the slideshow, I'll get it out to everybody. Kevin, yes.
Thank you. Just in thinking about those, 10 highlights, one of the things that has been discouraging is the county last year adopted their second climate resolution, and nothing on that resolution has been even discussed since. And so there's issues, and then there's a letter that was recently sent to the full county council asking them to take bolder action on climate with an entire ordinance drafted. And part of that ordinance looks at things like, how do we reduce fossil fuel consumption? Looking at the county fleet, how do we make the county fleet go electric, or at least to higher miles per gallon, instead of continuing to buy new SUVs? What sorts of methods could we do for going carbon neutral? I know a lot of these are not under your umbrella at all. I think they're under your vision, and they're not under your grant funded mandates. And so I would love your opinion when you're thinking about those, kind of what are the highlights that we're not doing, to really dive into kind of the climate aspects of how do we truly become a bold example of climate action.
Yeah. And, I do think, and we tried to do that a little bit with that climate resolution update, but probably didn't fully hit the mark. But, I worked for a utility, and they always had the saying of what gets measured gets done. And that notion that you have to have a performance target, and you have to have everybody working towards those performance targets. And that's the priority. And that's where I think my point, go back a slide or two, about that integration towards a future vision, and clearly defining what that future vision is, and making sure that the investments that are made in the county and the priorities that you put forth are run through that lens, and you give everyone a task to do, and you hold them accountable for doing it. And that's what I really saw with 2008, a previous resolution. I said, well, how many of these got done? And I went around and I started asking, did any of this get done? And people had various responses to that. And I said, okay, well, are we doing this again? And they're like, kind of, yeah. And I said, all right, well, I'll produce what you're asking, but I still really think that, you need to get clarity around how to make that implementable and hold the staff accountable for delivering.
Kendra, I've told this committee
exactly what we're seeing in places like Honolulu. They have a report card on their climate, environment, and sustainability.
Yep.
That 2000 resolution, 2008 was mine. By the the way, and nothing
I'm
came
sorry
of
it didn't get implemented.
No,
to the
none of it.
level
None of it
should.
got implemented.
Okay. Well, Kendra, thank you so much. And I hope you'll, keep us in mind as we're moving forward in this process. We think we're good. The Charter Commission will kind of be wrapping up June-ish.
Mhm.
So the sooner
Great.
we hear from you, the better. So, but
Okay.
thank you very much.
I'll move it up the priority list.
Okay.
Sounds
Adam-
good. Well, thank you
Adam-
all. I really
Yes,
appreciate it.
Kyle, did you have one more question?
I do. I'm sorry. I always do. Kendra, knowing some now about what we're charged with and kind of how we're approaching it, who else would you want to hear from, either in the county or in your kind of your career background? Who do you know of that we should approach to talk with? And maybe with the 10 steps or the 10 gaps, you could answer that down
Okay.
the road. But I really like to hear that from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me give that a little bit more thought.
Okay. Great.
I'll get back to you on that.
Great. Any more questions? Are we good to go? I just have to scroll here and see if I see anybody else. Okay, Kendra, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
You're welcome.
As you
Kendra,
can
you'll
tell,
need to make Anne Marie host again.
Okay. Let me see how I do that here.
Or just end our call.
I think, yes, I
I
think
think if she goes, I'm still on.
if I go, will you still be the host?
Let me see.
Let's hope so. I will wave goodbye and hope that I'm not going to disconnect you all.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, it's now telling me to sign the leave. See if that worked. Did it work?
Nope. You
Oh,
can't get away
I
from
can-
us.
You're
Let's see.
stuck with us.
It says I can reclaim host.
I think,
Oh,
yeah.
now
I
it says
just did.
San Juan County. Yes,
I reclaimed the host. Yes. Okay, I think we're good to go. We have a couple minutes. Any closing thoughts?
Yes, I wonder if I get any funding for carpal tunnel syndrome when I can't type fast enough. I'm kidding. But man, I took a lot of notes and I will share them with you. They won't be
Great.
in the minutes, they'll be separately.
Okay. And Kevin, you had something?
Yeah, a couple points. One is I forwarded all of you. She had emailed me the presentation, so I went ahead and already forwarded all that,
Oh, okay.
that to each of you, so you have it. The second thing is there's a ton of work being done. Some of the broader points, though, that aren't what you typically think of as public works, like stormwater, for instance, which is actual stuff getting done. A majority of the programs that were listed are voluntary and not on the ground environmental protections. And so I was just going through her full presentation again. And that's one of the areas that for me feels like the need for teeth, the need for some sort of stronger mechanism there. So I think she's amazing. It's really sad we're losing her, frankly, because I think her vision of bringing this together is making incredible progress. But for me, one of the things that came up was that there still seems to be a lack of any climate action. There's not much climate. There's some climate adaptation being discussed, but not any climate action. But then particularly in the Marine program, a majority of that was voluntary.
Okay. Kyle? And then
It's
Bob?
one of those places where I'm really struggling, actually. It was a fascinating presentation and there's some excitement and then I have some real sadness over it.
Yeah.
There's so much to do. And, a lot of the reasons those are voluntary programs is because they're outside funding, which, washes in and out with the tide. So I'm really struck by how much dreamscape I have, and yet how much the financial piece really is a factor. And I feel some obligation to come to the table with some of our ideas with some of that ammunition. And I'd love to hear, maybe not today, we don't have time, but there is a conversation among us to be had about those real issues.
Bob?
Yeah, I think we need to remember that our task is to build the machine, not come up with the machine's product. Now, we do need to know what we think the machine's product ought to be, you know, where we ought to end up, what the new department ought to achieve. So we do need to look into that part of it. I thought she was kind of resistant in a way. I mean, wonderful person. She works hard and all of that. But I think that she was seeing the barrier that funding presents, and had a hard time seeing past that barrier. And maybe that's because she is there and I'm not, you know. and so I said, well, let's get the money. Let's make sure. Let's put the two departments together over here, and you know, all we can do is work toward that. But I am really looking forward, and I'm really looking forward to that product, the list of 10 things. And I hope, Anne Marie, that you will send her an email every day saying, do you have it yet? Do you have it yet? Do you have it yet? Because
Okay.
we need it right away.
And I think that all of us need to think about sustainable tourism. There's a lot of money there.
Yeah.
Okay. So just ponder that. And because tourism is the business here, you know, no matter how much we want to talk about other things. And the environment is what people come here for. So
do you mean that as a funding source mostly? Because when I think of that, I just think of, you know, how do you turn charter wording or county structure to match what you're talking about? Because I don't disagree at all, but you know, is it the funding that you would make use of?
Well, there might be some leadership that's needed there.
Okay.
You know, and we're talking about sustainability and resilience. So just stretch it out, think about it, think about bike paths, think about electric vehicles, moving people around, you know, just. Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, I just want to say, we've been talking about bike paths for years and years. We've had special sessions just to discuss things like bike paths, and I've made a suggestion over and over again that I don't know whether it will ever come to pass, but how we could construct more bike paths without having to broaden roads and cut down a lot of trees. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to really go anywhere. So it's just another kind of source of frustration. And I feel like there are people here and the resources here that the county is not taking advantage of, not tapping into.
Yeah, that you got that impression. Okay. Anything else for the good of the group? Kevin, did you have a closing comment?
When I'm looking online at several different counties to look at what fee structures are in place, because I know of counties and cities where there's fee structures for the environment. So.
Okay. So we just keep thinking. Shall we adjourn?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
One more thing, that I think we have a huge opportunity in this county to tap into resources we haven't tapped into yet, and to really diversify our economic base. You know, I think sustainable tourism is something that we need to explore even more. And what can we add to what we already have, more than people shopping and going to restaurants?
Okay, all good? Until next week.
No, until tonight.
Oh, well, that's tonight.
Who's reporting
Or today.
for this committee tonight?
Well, I had been. Was there something else you wanted to share?
Nope,
Or that you thought we should? Okay,
Thank
I was
you
going to
very
just
much.
tell them about meeting with Kendra.
Where should I post minutes? Should I just send them to you? Because I don't know how to file them at this point.
I think you can send it to.
Send them to Kyle?
No,
Anne Marie.
I was going to say, Anne Marie, if you want to handle it, or you could just send them directly to Catherine.
Yeah, I can send them to Catherine. Is that the best, easiest thing for you, Sharon?
I would send them to Catherine and Olivia, because Olivia is
Right.
helping take a lot of stuff off Catherine's plate.
Yes.
So why don't you send them to me and I'll pass them on.
What about Kyle? Because Kyle's going to file them, or not going to file them until we've approved them. That's the deal, right?
Right.
Okay, I'll send them to Anne Marie and Olivia and Catherine for now.
Okay, that sounds good. All right.
See you
Have a
tonight.
good night. See you later.
Bye.
In a
All right.
couple hours.